how do storytellers write great fight scenes, and how can artists also make great fight scenes in comics or manga? Let's talk about it. Now we're gonna go from basic to most important. So the last point is really the most important point, so I would stay tuned throughout the whole video because you're gonna learn a ton of stuff here. All right, so the first thing is you need to know your character. This is very basic, but how does your character fight? What is their fighting style, right? There are different martial arts styles. There are different sword fighting styles. You know, there's fencing styles. There's HEMA. There's all sorts of stuff you could look at. The way you can find different styles if you're not experienced in doing them yourself is by looking up tutorials online. So you could look up, for example, with martial arts, boxing tutorials, and you could look at the basic techniques so that your fight scenes look more legitimate and so that you also have a visual reference to go off of. Now that we flew past that stuff, because it's honestly pretty basic and I'm sure you thought about it already, the next thing that matters so much is panel layout. And I feel like people assume that this is a basic thing, but it's actually really complex, I would say. So we're going to look at Berserk for this because Berserk does it really damn well. First things first, you want to think of your panel angles. You want to think of the camera angles, okay? I would look at film for this. You can look at some crazy Jackie Chan films, or you can look at some animes. It depends on the type of fight scene you're having, but you want to look up films that are similar and have really good fight scenes. For Berserk here, you see the reaction of the little demon guy here. He's all surprised. He's shocked. There's also a very unique, almost Mortal Kombat X-ray-like visual, which is really cool, showing that bones are being broken. Then you have Guts biting down on this dude's arm. Then you have his reaction. So you always set up the attack. If you were having someone throw a punch at another guy, you would have him building up the punch and then throwing the punch. That gives the punch way more energy. If you just show him punching the guy, you don't have any build up to it, so it's not as energetic. Now that doesn't mean it can't work. There's tons of different ways you can do it, but I personally have found the best way to do it is to show a lead up to an attack and then show the attack being executed right after. You can also use splash pages for big reveals. Berserk likes to use bigger panels for larger movement and more impact. I always like to show you guys examples of my work so that you can see how I implement it myself. In my book, Grandpa, name might not be final, we'll see. We start with a close-up reaction of a car in the sky because it's just been flung into the air by this god, right? Then we show a close-up action of our main character, Divinius, pressing a button in the car. And this activates the wings of the car, and you can see the motion lines and all of that. Then Hermes chases the car, jumping from rubble to rubble in the sky, which is really cool, and you can see the tracing lines because he's a super speed character. So that's another way you can show motion if you have a character who has super speed, or just a character who's fast in general, is by doing motion lines like this. The two most impactful shots are when the wings are extended and Hermes chasing. And those are the two largest panels as well. If you want to check out more about my book, then click the link down below to get more details. But one of the biggest advantages, and I would argue this is the biggest advantage that comics, novels, and manga have, is that we can use words to describe what the character is feeling, touching, tasting, and thinking. Let's dive into narration boxes for comics and manga. And we're going to be looking at The Dark Knight Returns. And this is how you write it for action. So in The Dark Knight Returns, he talks about how something in his abdomen explodes upon impact, right? That creates a very distinct pain in your own gut. You can feel that yourself. You're like, ooh, damn, that adds impact to the kick. It shows how hard it is. It also shows how much Batman is struggling to keep up with this guy. Batman even talks about the sunlight behind his eyes as the pain rises. A moment of blackness, too soon for that. So this man's passing out. You delve into the character's feelings, into their pain. And you can also delve into the character's strategy. It's very interesting if you have a skillful character or a very intelligent character. This is a good way to show how intelligent they are. You can delve into their head and into their tactics and into their strategies through narration boxes. These are things that normally wouldn't work as well on film unless you had a really good narrator and a really good actor who could do it very well, like Robert Downey Jr. in Sherlock Holmes or something.
Discombobulate.
We also can delve into the mind of the character and their internal struggles. So in this fight, Batman's ego is in play. He's testing himself. He wants to know if he's still worthy of being Batman, if he's still physically capable of doing this. And also, he's having an internal struggle of trying not to go into shock mid-fight. So the key points of narration boxes is to describe sensory details such as smell, taste, touch, hearing, and other injuries, etc. And then character reactions, so how descriptions can reveal characters' emotions, motivations, and internal struggles. But let's delve deeper. The number one thing that makes a action sequence work. You don't just want a filler action scene. You want the action scene to drive the story. Now, a lot of the time the action does drive the story because it creates external conflict. So, it has to be there to cause the next plot point to occur. That's a good way of doing it, and that can work as long as the action is really cool and you do all of the other things I said right. You can just have it be an external plot beat that drives the story and the plot forward. That is perfectly fine as long as the action scene is peak. But here's how you make a truly impactful action sequence. And it's by adding conflict of beliefs within the action. So this is tricky. This is not easy to do. You have to think about what are your protagonist's beliefs. So in Vinland Saga, Thorfinn's beliefs are that we should chase peace rather than violence and war. He's going the pacifist route, whereas his antagonists always want to fight him. They always want war, and they are always bloodthirsty, and they always want to kill, and they even want Thorfinn to try and kill them. So if you look at a lot of Thorfinn's fights, a lot of his fights are him holding back, trying not to kill the person, while the other person taunts him, trying to force them to kill him. So the one fight I really liked, and I think really was impactful for me, was the Hunter fight, because the Hunter, oh my god, this is such a good fight for so many reasons. But one, it's a very tactical fight, right? So you're going into the narration, into Thorfinn's strategies. It's a very smart fight. There's a lot of build up to it. The camera panels are great. The art's amazing, all that stuff. But in terms of story, the reason this fight is so good is because Thorfinn is having an internal conflict of who he used to be versus who he is now. It's so interesting because this girl is a victim of who Thorfinn used to be. And now Thorfinn is a completely new person, right? But she doesn't see that. She just sees the person who killed her family. She's hunting after him like he's an animal, and he's trying not to kill her. He's trying to be peaceful. And through this piece, she sees that he may have potentially changed, and she spares him for now, telling him that eventually, if he ever breaks his rule and doesn't create this kingdom that he's trying to create, then she will kill him. So that progresses the narrative forward because now you have a new character introduced, the Hunter. You have Thorfinn's beliefs reinforced, so now he has extra motivation to create this kingdom and create Vinland, a place of peace with no war. Thorfinn also faces this other younger guy who tries to battle him, and he is an aggressive fighter. He loves war. He was born and bred for war. That's all he's ever loved. And he keeps testing Thorfinn, and he wants Thorfinn to kill him. This delves even deeper into Thorfinn's conflict of beliefs because Thorfinn is really at a disadvantage by not killing this guy. However, he still sticks to his beliefs and beats the guy. It makes it interesting, and it also puts Thorfinn at a disadvantage, which is something I would keep in mind. You don't always have to have your character at a severe disadvantage, but for example, in my book, Grandpa, my main character, Divinius, is always at a disadvantage because he's a man going up against gods. So it pretty much keeps it interesting the whole time because he's always at a power disadvantage. He never really has the advantage unless he has other gods with him. So he has to use his wits and find other ways to survive and win battles. The key points though, the key points are character's conflict of beliefs. What beliefs does your protagonist hold? and the character they're fighting hold. Thorfinn believes in peace, Garm believes in war. That is the number one thing when it comes to action sequences. You don't even have to have extreme action sequences if you nail the conflict of beliefs and internal conflict to a T, but those are really hard to nail. So I would recommend also having really beautiful action and really beautiful panel layout and doing that right as well, because this is a visual medium after all. You'd be surprised how many books actually have fight scenes that don't even have an external conflict. It's really just they're fighting for no reason. Their main character doesn't really want anything, and the people they're fighting aren't in their way. They're just fighting them because it's a filler fight scene and they feel like there hasn't been action in a while. So never do that. But in summary, those are the main things that make a great fight scene. You have panel layout, knowing your character, narration, and conflict of beliefs. Like the video if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you want more like it. Keep reading and writing. I'll see ya.